The story began with someone moving into a new apartment. The moving company worker was carrying in boxes one after another until he finally placed the last one down, exclaiming with relief and happiness that it was the last box and his work was done. The person who had moved in, Han, smiled with satisfaction, thanking the mover for his effort and kindness. The mover replied that it was no problem at all, adding that if Han ever needed help moving again, he could just call him. Outside, dark clouds were starting to gather, and the mover, noticing this, commented that moving on a rainy day was an auspicious sign that brought good luck. After he left, Han stood in the middle of his new apartment, happiness rising inside him as he realized that he was finally independent. He rolled around on the floor in excitement, laughing to himself as he began talking about his new life. His apartment was a perfect two-room space, and at 26 years old, Han had longed to experience solitude for a very long time. In his old home, he had no privacy at all, constantly surrounded by his family and burdened with taking care of his siblings. It had always felt suffocating, and now, having finally found such a perfect apartment at a lump sum price, he couldn't stop himself from feeling emotional. Tears welled up in his eyes as he thought about how lucky he was. After spending a while being happy about his new situation, he decided to go out to buy some chicken and eat while watching Netflix. But when he turned toward the bed, he saw that something was already there. The moment he noticed a small movement, he froze and looked closer. Sitting on the bed was a strange little creature that looked like a mix of a cat and an owl with long rabbit-like ears. It was sitting calmly and waving one of its arms at him. Han was shocked. He had no idea what the creature was, how it had gotten in, or why it was waving at him. But the creature seemed unconcerned, continuing to smile through its small beak while waving. Then, suddenly, a flash of lightning lit up the entire room, the brightness outlining the creature's small body. It didn't react to the thunder at all, only lying back comfortably as if the bed belonged to it. Han, too tired to think logically, stared blankly and finally asked the creature what it was. That was when the story shifted to an explanation about griffins. In their world, griffins were magical creatures that symbolized strength and bravery. They were seen as symbols of hope, ruling both the skies and the earth. But despite their power, they were known for their friendliness and ability to coexist peacefully with humans for centuries, forming a relationship like mutual partners. Griffins came in many breeds and forms, some resembling hawks, some parrots, and others owls mixed with tiger claws. The creature in front of Han belonged to one of the smaller subspecies called a hollow-eyed griffin, known for its resemblance to a cat with rabbit ears, a beak, and pigeon-like wings. Covered in soft fur and behaving much like a cat, this type of griffin was considered one of the friendliest and most curious kinds, often kept as ideal pets because of their obedient and affectionate nature. All of this information was something Han found online as he searched for answers about the creature. But the more he read, the more frustrated he became, because what he wanted to know wasn't the species or its classification. He wanted to know why a pet griffin was sitting on his bed as if it owned the place. Even when he asked questions on online community boards, no one could give him a proper answer. Annoyed, he put his phone down and turned back to the creature. He asked aloud how it had even gotten into the apartment, since all the doors and windows were closed tightly before he moved in. Looking closer, Han wondered if it might be a wild creature, but its clean, well-groomed fur suggested otherwise. Still, the sight of it sitting comfortably on his brand-new bedsheets made him sigh in irritation. Slowly, he extended his hand toward it, cautiously asking whether it had any germs on it or not. Before he could touch it, the creature rubbed its fur affectionately against his hand, purring softly like a cat and flaring its arms as if calling for more attention. The display was unexpectedly cute, and the softness of its fur made Han smile despite himself. Thinking the creature had accepted him, he gently tried to pet it again, his hand moving closer to its body. But this time, the creature suddenly turned its head and bit his hand with its short beak. Pain shot through him instantly, and he stumbled backward, clutching his hand in shock and disbelief. The creature, however, seemed pleased with itself, wagging its tail happily like it had achieved something great. Once the pain eased, Han glared at it, annoyed and frustrated, asking why it could touch him freely but he couldn't touch it in return. Feeling it was unfair, he picked up his phone again and started scrolling through online posts for answers. He found one explanation that said hollow-eyed griffins were known to be moody. They might let someone pet them one moment, then bite the next. Realizing that the creature was just using its cute appearance to get away with bad behavior, Han sighed in frustration. Just then, a notification popped up on his phone. It was a reply to the question he had posted earlier about the griffins suddenly appearing in his room. When he opened it, the comment suggested that the creature might have been an abandoned pet left behind by the apartment's previous tenant. Han's expression softened as he read it again. It made sense. He hadn't considered that possibility before, but now that he thought about it, it explained everything. Feeling a bit guilty for not realizing it sooner, he decided to ask the neighbors about it. Carrying the small creature carefully in his arms, he went next door and rang the bell, hoping someone would know something. A voice from inside called out, asking him to wait a moment. They were coming out soon. Han stood there in the hallway, the griffin nestled quietly against him, waiting for an answer. The person who answered the door was a kind-looking middle-aged woman holding a strange fantasy pet in her arms. A small, three-headed creature that looked somewhat like a Charizard with a thick lizard-like tail, but cat-like limbs. Han lifted the small griffin in his arms to her eye level and introduced himself as Han, explaining that he had just moved into Unit 301 earlier that morning. The creature in his arms kept wriggling around, trying to escape, but Han held it firmly while asking the woman if she had ever seen this hollow-eyed griffin before. He also mentioned that he wanted to know whether the previous tenant had left it behind. Before she could respond, a child around 9 or 10 years old came running out from inside the apartment, shouting excitedly to her mother that Haeyang was there. Han blinked in surprise. The fact that the child already knew this creature's name startled him. To confirm, the woman gently released her own pet to the ground, letting it roam freely, and looked at the griffin that Han was holding. She then said that their unit was right next to Hanamuri and Jimmy's room, the family who had lived in Han's apartment before him. The child pointed eagerly at Han and the griffin, asking if Han wasn't going to take Haeyang on a walk today. Realizing what he had just heard, Han looked at the woman and asked if Haeyang was the name of this creature. The moment he said the name, the little griffin purred softly as if responding to it. The woman paused, clearly confused by the situation, then stepped back and began explaining what she knew. As she spoke, Han realized that this creature was far more familiar to the neighborhood than he had thought. She told him that the previous owner of his apartment had raised the griffin for a long time. The children of the building used to play with it often, and everyone in the neighborhood knew it well. She further explained that the old tenant loved and cared for Haeyang deeply, saying that it was impossible for them to have abandoned her. She then offered to give Han the contact number of the previous tenant so that he could confirm everything himself. But Han, already frustrated, dismissed what she said, insisting that her story made no sense. In his view, no one in their right mind would ever leave behind their pet when moving out. Taking out his phone, he angrily dialed the number she gave him, determined to give them a piece of his mind. As the call connected, he tried to calm himself enough to speak, though irritation still clouded his thoughts. When someone answered with a simple hello, Han didn't waste time and directly asked if they were Haeyang's owner. The voice on the other end instantly grew serious and asked who he was. Han replied with the same tone, saying that he currently had Haeyang with him. But as soon as he said that, the person on the line, a young girl, shouted to her mother that some stranger was calling and saying they had Haeyang. Han heard muffled sounds as the mother came running, scolding her daughter and calling the situation nonsense. Meanwhile, the real Haeyang, or at least the creature Han was holding, was sitting calmly on his floor, lightly tapping its tail. Suddenly, a deep male voice, probably the girl's father, came over the line, demanding to know who the stranger was. Han didn't hesitate and said that he was the one taking care of Haeyang now. His frustration grew as he accused them of being irresponsible, saying that when someone adopts a pet, it is their duty to care for it till the very end. As his anger rose, Haeyang walked closer and gently rubbed its paw against Han's hand, but he barely noticed. The man on the call insisted that the old apartment had become too small and that Haeyang had grown ugly, saying they couldn't keep it anymore. Han's anger flared at that. He shouted back, calling their attitude heartless, saying that lives weren't toys to be discarded whenever convenient. His voice grew louder as he argued, until finally he burst out completely, saying that no one had the right to abandon a living being so carelessly. But then the man on the other end changed his tone entirely. Confused, he asked what Han was even talking about. Han, thrown off, demanded to know what he meant by that. The man then calmly said that they had Hae-yang right there with them, eating and playing next to his daughter. Han froze. The words made no sense. His mind went blank as confusion, disbelief, and a hint of fear washed over him. The father sent a photo a few moments later to prove it, a picture of his daughter sitting beside a griffin identical to the one in Han's room. Even the smallest details matched perfectly, the same fur color, the same rabbit-like ears, even the same beak shape. Han stared at the photo, then slowly turned to look at the creature sitting in front of him. It was identical in every way. For a long moment he couldn't move. His thoughts were tangled and heavy, struggling to process what had just happened. When he finally spoke again, his voice was quiet and uncertain, repeating the same question he had asked when he first saw it. What was this creature? The griffin only tilted its head, blinking at him, and made a small, soft, chirping sound in response. Han took a deep breath, staring at the mysterious creature that had somehow appeared in his life without warning. As he gathered his thoughts, he muttered to himself that an unexpected visitor had arrived at his new home, and now he had to decide what to do with this small and troublesome guest. The scene opened with a wide view of the city slowly moving past familiar places, the apartment where Han lived, the tenant lady and her family, the child, and even the previous owner with their own pet Hae-yang. The story began in the park where everyone had gathered. Han, the previous tenants, both Hae-yangs, and the small creature that Han had discovered in his room. The two griffins stood face to face, nearly identical in every way, the same fur texture, the same bright eyes, ears, and posture. The only thing setting them apart was that the tenant family's Hae-yang wore a small orange shirt, which made it easier to tell which one belonged to whom. The father commented that the two looked so alike that it made sense why the lady in room 302 had been startled earlier. The mother agreed, mentioning that while the species wasn't particularly rare, finding two with such similar appearances living so close together was extremely unusual. Realizing his misunderstanding, Han sincerely apologized to the family for yelling and accusing them without understanding the situation. The tenant lady smiled and forgave him easily, saying that anyone in his position might have made the same mistake. Her husband even admitted that when he first received Han's call, he thought it was some kind of scam or prank. Han kept apologizing, his embarrassment obvious, until the atmosphere finally lightened. Once the tension faded, the lady asked Han what he planned to do with the little creature that had appeared out of nowhere in his room. She gently reminded him that since they now knew it wasn't their Hae-yang, it was his responsibility to decide what to do next. She also sympathized with him, saying it must be tough to deal with something like this just after moving in, especially when it might take days to find the creature's real owner. Han looked at the small being that was now playing cheerfully beside Hae-yang. Its soft eyes, tiny beak, short legs, and fluffy ears made it impossible not to smile. Watching it move so innocently, he softened and decided he would take care of it for now until the owner was found. Seeing his genuine kindness, the tenant couple exchanged a warm smile. Han, confused by their reaction, didn't quite understand why they were suddenly grinning at him. The lady said that they would help him out as much as possible since he was now a first-time pet owner. She brought out a few bags of food they had bought earlier and insisted he take them, along with some toys and treats. Han tried to refuse, but she wouldn't take no for an answer, reminding him that moving into a new place must have already cost him a lot. The little girl cheered happily, excited to see the creature staying with Han, and he finally accepted their help, thanking them sincerely. When the lady asked if he had ever raised a pet before, Han admitted he hadn't. While they spoke, the little girl played happily with the new creature, while Hae-yang stood nearby, clearly annoyed by the lack of attention it was getting. Suddenly, the girl noticed something unusual and called out that one of the creature's back paws looked different. She lifted it up to show everyone, revealing that one of the paw pads on its left hind leg was a dark brownish-black color, while the others were light pink. The contrast was adorable, and everyone admired it, calling it unique and cute. The tenant father jokingly called it Spotty, though Hae-yang continued to sulk beside them. Then the father suggested that since it didn't have a name yet, they should think of one. He proposed calling it Spotty because of its paw, but the little girl wasn't impressed. The mother laughed softly and said that the one raising it should be the one to name it. Hearing that, the father turned to Han and asked what name he wanted to give it. Put on the spot, Han hesitated and said he hadn't decided yet. A moment later, he quickly added that he did have an idea after all. The creature tilted its head and made a small noise, as if curious but not understanding what was happening. Han decided to call it Fluffy. But when he did, the creature didn't seem to respond at all. Han tried again, calling out different variations of the name while making silly sounds, even sticking out his tongue playfully, though it only made him look a little strange. The little girl gave him a pitying look while the creature continued ignoring him completely. Han grew desperate, asking the creature not to ignore him and promising treats if it came closer. But as soon as the little girl called it Cutie, the creature happily jumped into her arms, ignoring Han entirely. Seeing this difference crushed his confidence. He muttered that even though he had given it such a cool name, the girl had already called it lame. She said it was such a boring name that even the creature didn't like it. Han tried to defend himself, saying that since the creature's species was a fluffy tit, the name Fluffy fit perfectly, just like naming a dog dog. The girl, unimpressed, said that was exactly why it didn't work. A short while later, her parents returned from the market with more supplies and asked Han if the creature had recognized its name yet. Han admitted with disappointment that it hadn't. The tenant father comforted him, saying that bonding takes time and that one day wouldn't be enough. He advised Han to try feeding the creature and spend more time with it at home, handing him one of the food packets they had brought. Han took it with a grateful smile, though he couldn't help but think the amount was far more than he needed. The tenant father laughed and told Han that it was only a few weeks' worth of food, nothing too much. Going along with his words, the mother added that everyone should help each other out and told Han that if he ever needed anything, he could always call them. Then, with a warm smile, she bent down and asked the small creature if she could pet it one last time. The creature immediately jumped into her lap, making her laugh softly as she said that it clearly knew when it was being loved. It seemed to understand everything except its own name. Watching that, Han felt a little defeated. He asked the others whether he should just change its name since it didn't seem to respond to Fluffy. As he walked back home afterward, he tried to convince himself that it didn't really matter, because he was only looking after the creature temporarily until its real owner was found. Back inside his apartment, Han opened one of the food packets the family had given him and poured it into a small bowl. He set another bowl beside it and filled it with water, placing both in front of the creature that was waiting patiently. He pointed at them, explaining that this would be its eating and drinking spot. He even muttered that he had seen on YouTube how pets should have separate areas for eating and resting. The creature bent forward, staring curiously into the water bowl while Han waited to see what it would do. But instead of drinking, it dipped both of its little legs straight into the water, splashing it everywhere. Water scattered all over the floor as the creature joyfully played until the bowl was nearly empty. Han shouted in surprise and frustration, demanding to know why it had spilled everything. Startled by his voice, the creature ran off, leaving the mess behind without touching its food. After things settled down, Han sighed and began wiping the floor clean. Both he and the creature stood near the kitchen, facing each other in silence. Han muttered to himself that figuring this animal out was going to be a lot harder than he thought. Then, out of nowhere, the creature jumped up onto the kitchen counter, startling him. It walked carefully toward the running faucet, making soft noises and pointing at the water with its small leg. Han didn't understand what it wanted, but the creature ignored him and moved closer to the faucet. It lowered its beak to the stream of running water and began drinking straight from it. After a few moments, it looked completely satisfied, shaking its ears and making cheerful noises. Han blinked in disbelief, realizing that the creature only drank flowing water instead of still water. It kept drinking as if it were sipping from a small waterfall. Eventually, Han just gave up and let it do what it wanted. When it was done, he started preparing a small sleeping area for it. He thought about how picky it seemed, but still made sure it had a comfortable space. He placed a soft pillow in the corner of the living room and told himself that this would be the creature's bed. It seemed like a cozy spot, but the creature didn't even look interested. Instead, it walked away, opened the bedroom door, and trotted inside. Han stood there, stunned. He could only let out a confused "huh" before chasing after it. The creature jumped right onto his bed, curling up comfortably as if it owned the place. Han rushed in, protesting that his bed was his personal space, his sanctuary, and there was no way he would share it. The creature made a strange noise that almost sounded like laughter, which only made him angrier. He reminded it that this was a temporary stay, that it wasn't going to live here permanently, and that the line between them was that door, the bedroom was off limits. But as if trying to test his patience, the creature rolled onto its back and began showing its belly, waving its small paws and giving him wide, sparkling eyes. Han froze at how cute it looked. For a second, he nearly reached out to pet it before catching himself mid-motion and turning his head away, muttering that he wouldn't fall for such tricks. He told himself that just because it was being adorable didn't mean he should give in. Determined, he stepped forward, picked up the creature by its belly and carried it toward the living room. But the creature resisted, lightly biting his hand with its short beak. After a long and tiring back-and-forth struggle, they finally reached a compromise. The creature would not sleep on the bed, but it could stay in the bedroom with Han, sleeping on its own pillow. Still a little grumpy, the creature flopped onto its small bed, flicking its tail in annoyance. As Han prepared to sleep, he reminded it one last time that the bed was off limits and that it should be thankful for being allowed in the room at all. The creature responded with another teasing sound that seemed like laughter, making Han groan in exhaustion. He lay down, thinking about how chaotic the day had been moving into a new home, discovering this strange animal, meeting the previous tenants, and dealing with all the confusion. He sighed, realizing he hadn't even had time to enjoy his new place before it was already being taken over, just like in his old apartment. Before drifting off, he promised himself that he would post a missing pet notice first thing in the morning. Still, doubt crept into his mind. He wondered if anyone would actually respond to the notice. It seemed impossible that someone could lose a creature this adorable and not be searching for it everywhere. To protect himself from getting too attached, Han decided he would keep some distance. He convinced himself that the space he was maintaining now was just right, not too close, not too far. Morning sunlight began to fill the room, warm and bright, signaling the start of a new day. Han slowly woke up, squinting at the light hitting his face. He groaned softly, wondering why it was already so bright, and sat up to check the time. That's when he noticed something on the bed. The sight almost took his breath away. The early rays of sunlight fell gently on the creature's fur, making it glow softly like a small star. Completely unaware of its beauty, the creature slept peacefully between Han's legs, breathing slowly. As it stretched and yawned awake, its tiny paws flexed, and it made quiet, sleepy sounds. Han knew he had promised to stay emotionally distant, but looking at the creature now, he couldn't help but feel a warmth growing inside him. Watching such a small, innocent being wake up to a new morning made him smile despite himself. Maybe, he thought, he could allow himself to rest a little longer. It was, after all, his first morning in his new home, and staying in bed for a while didn't seem like such a bad idea. The creature walked near one of the empty bowls, moving back and forth as if trying to tell Han to give it something to eat. But Han was too busy trying to make the creature look at the camera so he could take a picture for the missing poster he planned to post online. The creature seemed completely tired of him and his actions. Han kept making strange sounds and kept talking, trying to get the creature's attention, saying how it looked so pretty and asking it to stay still for just a few seconds so that the picture would not turn out blurry. The creature, fully understanding what Han was trying to do, suddenly started running around the entire house at a crazy speed, as if just to make fun of him and annoy him on purpose. Han could not take a single proper picture because of it, and in all the photos, the creature appeared as nothing more than a white smear across the screen. Finally, Han lost his patience and grabbed the creature by its small body, forcing it to stay still so he could take a proper photo. The result made the creature look terrified, like someone had suddenly taken its mugshot without warning. Still, Han decided to use that picture and posted it on one of the messaging boards in his neighborhood. He was a little worried that people might not take the post seriously because the photo was blurry, but he thought that it would be fine since what mattered most was showing what the creature looked like, so that everyone could recognize which animal was lost. After posting it, Han looked at the creature lying lazily on his bed and complained that every time he picked up the camera, it would start moving around instead of staying still. He blamed it for making his post look so bad because he could not take a clear photo. Both of them soon fell silent, staring at each other as if in a standoff, each waiting for the other to make a move. They both seemed to know that something was about to happen next. Then suddenly, like a cowboy reaching for his gun, Han quickly pulled out his phone from his pocket, planning to take a surprise picture. But the creature immediately realized what Han was about to do and jumped at the exact same moment. The creature started flying and jumping wildly across the room, crashing into walls and knocking over small objects in its path. Han, completely shocked and frustrated, started shouting that he wasn't going to take any more pictures, repeating it several times as the creature kept bouncing around uncontrollably. In the middle of all that noise, Han's phone made a notification sound. Someone had sent him a message about the creature. When he checked his phone, he saw that the message was from Jai, who was asking if Han was the one taking care of the creature. Jai also asked Han to send him a photo of it. After the request, Jai sent a strange sticker of a cartoon bank robber and said that he was Griffin River, which was why he wanted a picture of Griffin from Han. Han stared at the message without replying for a moment, thinking about it, but then he sent the pictures anyway. He selected all the photos one by one, even though every single one was blurry and unclear. He didn't care at that point since he didn't have any good photos anyway. Not long after sending the photos to Jai, Han suddenly heard loud, repeated knocks on his front door. The creature, who had been flying around just moments ago, had crashed into one of the clothes racks, causing it to fall over and completely bury the creature under a pile of clothes. Han didn't bother to check on it, as he was now more focused on the sudden knocking. Moving cautiously, he slowly opened the front door and asked who it was. Standing outside was a large, burly man whose shadow filled the doorway. The man stood silently for a second, and before Han could say anything else, the man pushed his arm through the opening and tried to force the door open. Han froze, shocked by the sudden action, but before he could react, the man started yelling loudly about how cute Griffin was, saying that he just had to see him, shouting in a way that made him sound completely crazy. It was then revealed that the unkempt, wild-looking man was actually Jai, Han's friend. Han yelled in surprise, asking Jai how he even knew where Han lived. Jai shouted back that he had gotten Han's address when Han had first moved in and that he had planned to visit earlier with a housewarming gift, something Han had completely forgotten about. Realizing this, Han awkwardly laughed, embarrassed that he had forgotten, but Jai didn't care at all. He kept shouting that he needed to see the creature right away. Han sighed and told Jai to come inside slowly, saying that he wasn't sure how the creature would react to a stranger, but that they could at least try. Jai entered, and Han turned toward the doorway, where the creature was now standing perfectly still, staring straight at Jai without showing any emotion. Jai's face twisted into a strange, overly excited expression that looked creepy enough to scare anyone, but the creature didn't react at all. It just stood there, calm and silent, as if it didn't care. After a few seconds, the creature got bored and lay on its back, stretching out as if trying to show off its cuteness on purpose. Seeing that, Jai lost his mind and shouted that the creature was so cute that he could eat it piece by piece. Han was completely creeped out by the way Jai said it, thinking that it sounded way too dangerous coming from someone with a face like that. He told himself that he should probably keep Jai away from the creature in the future. To distract him, Han said that since Jai was already here, he would at least offer him some water. He went into the kitchen to get a glass, and while he was gone, Jai asked what the creature's name was. Han called back that it was Fluffy, but Jai misheard and started calling it Little Cloud instead. Annoyed, Han came back and corrected him sharply, saying it was Fluffy, not Little Cloud. Jai slowly reached out his hand toward the creature, which made Han nervous because he was afraid the creature might bite him if Jai got too close. But instead of biting, the creature simply stared at Jai's fingers with quiet curiosity. Jai turned his wrist and opened his hand, bringing his fingertips close to the creature's beak. Then, almost naturally, he gently pinched the bottom of its beak with 2 fingers, and the creature didn't resist at all. Instead, it seemed to enjoy the touch and allowed Jai to keep petting it. Jai continued rubbing its beak, and the creature began flapping its ears happily, letting out soft purring sounds that filled the room with a calm, pleasant rhythm. In the middle of the petting and the gentle sounds, there was suddenly a sharp click. Surprised, the creature looked up to see what had happened and found Jai silently holding a camera near its face. Jai had taken a photo while it was distracted. Realizing what had happened, the creature immediately jumped up in shock, moving fast as lightning. Han, who had been watching the scene, asked Jai if he managed to take a good picture. Jai nodded casually and showed Han the photo he had just taken. When Han saw it, he was completely shocked. The image was clear and perfectly framed, showing the creature's features beautifully. Han couldn't believe it and started shouting, asking how Jai managed to take such a good picture when all of his own attempts had failed. Jai explained that creatures like this often had very sharp eyesight and tended to get scared by shiny objects like the camera lens. To show what he meant, Jai decided to demonstrate it in front of Han. He called to the creature, holding up a small treat to get its attention. He said that the snack he was holding was specially made for creatures like this. The creature immediately began walking toward him, its focus locked on the treat. As soon as its eyes followed the snack, Jai lifted his camera and clicked another picture while the creature was distracted. The method worked perfectly. They continued using the same trick, distracting the creature with snacks and toys while Jai kept taking pictures. Soon they tried making the creature jump for the snack, chase a toy, and pose in different playful positions. Jai kept clicking the camera, capturing dozens of adorable and lively photos. The creature eventually grew used to the flashing light and stopped being afraid of the camera altogether. Han just stood to the side, quietly amazed at how easily Jai managed to take so many good pictures. He hadn't known Jai was this skilled at photography. Impressed, Han asked him to take a photo of him as well. Jai groaned, confused about why Han wanted that, but Han explained that he wanted a new profile picture. Jai pointed the camera at him as Han posed casually for the shot. When Jai showed him the result, Han's face twisted in horror. The photo made him look strange and unflattering, almost like a ghost. Han yelled at Jai, demanding to know why the picture looked so bad compared to the beautiful photos of the creature. Jai grumbled that taking pictures of people wasn't fun because humans were ugly, and Han shouted back, calling him a speciest. The two of them argued for a moment before the mood calmed again. Time passed, and soon the evening light began to fade. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the room slowly filled with a soft orange glow. Han told Jai that he had already transferred all the photos from Jai's camera to his phone. When Han checked his storage, he was stunned to see that his memory was already 98% full. Jai, however, didn't seem bothered and was still busy playing with the creature, saying he would come again to take even more photos. Han told him to free up some space, but Jai ignored him and kept teasing the creature. Han looked at his phone in silence for a while, his expression turning calm and distant. In a quiet, almost sad voice, he told Jai that there might not be a next time. Jai stopped playing and looked confused, asking what Han meant. Han didn't hesitate and explained that he had already posted the new photos on the notice board, searching for the creature's original owner. He might get a call as early as the next day, and once that happened, the creature would have to leave. Jai sighed and started petting the creature again, this time more gently. He said that if his time with the creature was limited, he would visit as often as he could to take more pictures, so that when the creature was gone, he would still have something to remember it by. Then, jokingly but with a creepy smile, he said that maybe he should nibble the creature's cheeks or even stuff it into his pocket to take home. Han laughed at the absurd comment while the creature screeched in protest, flapping its ears wildly. As night finally settled in, Han said goodbye to Jai, who was now tearing up, saying that he would definitely come back to visit the little cloud. Han shouted for him to leave, annoyed that he still called it that. After Jai left and the door closed behind him, Han sighed deeply, feeling drained. He thought to himself that guests could really be exhausting sometimes. When he looked toward his bed, he saw the creature fast asleep, curled up peacefully after playing so much with Jai. It still held one of the toys Jai had brought, gripping it softly even in its sleep. Han walked closer and smiled faintly, whispering to himself that Jai must have played with the creature so much that it completely wore itself out. He leaned slightly closer and took a selfie, capturing himself with the sleeping creature in the background, still holding the toy Jai had given it. The photo came out beautifully, showing a soft smile on Han's face filled with affection and emotion. Han stared at the picture for a moment and told himself that he was only doing this to remember the creature since their time together was limited. He knew that once it was gone, he wouldn't be able to see it again no matter how much he wanted to. Wanting to make the most of the time they had left, he set the selfie as his phone's lock screen. Then he slowly reached out his hand and gently patted the creature's head, softly calling its name, Fluffy. The scene shifted to a veterinary hospital where a doctor was carefully injecting a syringe into the back of the small creature, administering some kind of drug. The doctor kept encouraging the creature to move a little and stretch its body. She praised it repeatedly, saying it was very well behaved and didn't even flinch. Han was surprised and asked if that was really the case. The doctor confirmed with a smile, saying that the creature had clearly been raised with great care. She continued to share good news, explaining that the health chart, respiration rate, heart rate, x-rays, and bones were all perfectly normal. She estimated that the creature was about 4 years old. Worried about what this meant in terms of its lifespan, Han asked about it, and the doctor explained that small griffins usually live around 25 to 30 years. That meant this little fluffy creature was only about 18 years old in human terms. Realizing that the creature was still a child, Han began teasing it and told it to call him Senior. The creature responded with a spitting sound, which Han immediately recognized as an insult. The doctor then asked Han where he had found the creature. Han said that he had simply found it sitting on his bed one morning. He had asked around, but nobody knew where it had come from. He picked the creature up and complained to the doctor that it would have been easier if the pet had a tracking chip, but unfortunately it didn't. The doctor tried to console him, saying that the laws about pet chips varied by region, and in some places it wasn't mandatory. She reassured him that they would definitely find the owner because the creature seemed far too well adjusted to human life to have been abandoned in the wild. Smiling at the creature, she called it Sweetie and asked softly if she was right. Hearing the doctor's gentle tone, the creature immediately understood that it was being praised and turned around to show its belly, making cute noises to express affection. The doctor was delighted and began taking pictures of the adorable creature lying there like a spoiled pet. Han, on the other hand, picked it up and scolded it for acting like this in public, saying that this wasn't his bedroom and that it was time to go home. Annoyed by Han's tone, the creature grew angry and suddenly bit his index finger. Han yelped in shock and pain, shouting about why it had bitten him. The next scene took place in another hospital, this time a dietitian's clinic for magical creatures. There Han saw another griffin, golden in color, though slightly different in appearance from his own. He was shocked when he saw the bill, 300,000 won. The doctor explained that the cost covered the health examination, vaccines, carrier pads, food, and treats. Han was speechless at how expensive it was to take care of a pet. The doctor explained that fantasy creatures required highly customized examinations because each one had unique biological features that needed specialized equipment like ultrasound and other advanced tools. Han could only sigh, muttering that these creatures were really difficult to raise. Even though most of his conversation revolved around him asking for discounts, it didn't help. Meanwhile, the golden griffin in the clinic started staring at Han's white-colored creature, which was sitting quietly inside its carrier box. In response, Han's griffin made the same cussing noise again. After the examination and nutritional checks were done, Han finally brought the creature back home. Once they arrived at the apartment, the creature climbed out of the pet bag and started grooming itself with its beak. Han, exhausted from visiting the hospitals and shops all day, collapsed onto his bed, muttering to himself about all the things he had done and what still needed to be done. He had also visited the local shelter earlier, trying to locate the owner, but it was all too much for him. For someone like Han, who preferred staying indoors, this schedule felt like pure torture. Tired and hungry, he thought about ordering food delivery but decided to check his bank account first. To his dismay, he saw that only $60 were left. Realizing he couldn't afford much, he decided to just make ramen. He opened the packet, boiled it on the stove until the noodles turned golden and orange, and looked deliciously ready to eat. When he tried to lift the pot, he accidentally burned his fingers and cried out in pain, complaining about where the kitchen towel had gone when he needed it most. With no other choice, he used his t-shirt as a makeshift towel to carry the hot pot to his bedroom. When he reached the bedroom, he was startled to see the creature sitting on the table in a proud sphinx-like pose, dangerously close to where he wanted to put the boiling pot. He scolded the creature, trying to shoo it away, and even nudged it gently with his foot. The creature, annoyed as ever, made that same rude sound again. Han shouted that it was dangerous and could burn him, insisting that it get off the table. After a bit of fuss, the creature finally jumped down, and Han carefully placed the hot pot on the table. Exhausted, he sighed and muttered that they would have to live like this for a while since he hadn't expected to spend so much money so quickly. Han pulled out a few strands of noodles while they were still boiling hot, letting them dangle in the air as he blew on them to cool them down enough to eat. Once the steam had settled, he slowly began slurping the noodles, making soft, slurping sounds that filled the quiet room. The savory aroma and his obvious enjoyment made the fluffy creature sitting beside him watch closely, its curious eyes following every movement. Han tasted the ramen and smiled, thinking that this old flavor never got boring and that he could probably live on one meal like this a day. The creature, however, couldn't resist the tempting smell. It stood up on the table and began making low purring sounds to get Han's attention. Seeing it snooping around, Han wondered what it was trying to do. He figured that maybe, since these creatures were naturally curious, it just wanted to see what he was holding. Not paying much attention to it, Han continued eating his noodles, happily slurping as the creature observed him closely. But then, overcome by curiosity, the creature stretched out one of its small arms toward the noodles hanging from Han's chopsticks. The sudden and unexpected movement startled Han so much that he froze, staring at the creature in disbelief, wondering what it was trying to do. Acting on reflex, he quickly grabbed its arm to stop it from pulling the noodles into its beak. Using his other hand, he held the creature's head back as it tried to reach forward toward the food. Both of them ended up struggling against each other in a strange, tense tug-of-war over the noodles. Han, straining to hold it back, shouted that it couldn't eat that because these noodles would make it sick. The creature ignored him and kept pushing forward, its beak almost touching the noodles while Han used all his strength to restrain it. He couldn't believe how strong such a small creature could be. In the midst of their struggle, the creature used one of the folding table legs as leverage to push itself forward. But the leg wasn't sturdy, and under pressure it gave way, collapsing inward. The table tilted and then fell over completely. The pot of ramen toppled from its surface, spilling its contents all over the floor. The creature reacted instantly, jumping out of the way like a startled cat, while Han could only watch as his precious meal splattered everywhere. He stared at the mess in shock and frustration before shouting in anger that his ramen, his first proper meal of the day, was ruined. The creature, seemingly aware of his anger, quickly tapped its feet and ran away toward the living room. Still fuming, Han got up, determined to scold it for destroying his food. He chased it into the living room where he found the creature sitting calmly by its food bowl. He yelled in frustration, saying that because of this creature he had spent all his money and now even his meal time was ruined. But the creature simply tipped its empty food bowl slightly with its beak, clearly signaling that it was hungry too. Han paused and stared at it, realizing what it meant. The creature continued nudging the bowl, looking up at him as if to say it needed to eat as well. Han sighed, finally understanding that it wasn't just him who was starving. Accepting this, Han opened 2 packets of food. One was another ramen for himself, and the other was a packet of wet gravy food for the creature. He cleaned up the mess on the floor, washed the pot and bowl, and started cooking again. Once everything was ready, he placed his ramen on the table and filled the creature's bowl with the wet food, which it immediately began devouring with enthusiasm. Watching it eat so eagerly, Han felt his anger fade. Sitting back down, he apologized softly, admitting to himself that he had been selfish, thinking only about his own hunger when the creature must have been starving after their long day at the vet. As he ate, he looked at the creature and asked if the food tasted good. The creature gave a small nod and made a noise that sounded like a satisfied reply. Han smiled faintly and said that he understood. Then he started slurping his noodles again, this time feeling a bit happier. Eating together made things feel warmer somehow. He even thought to himself that sharing a meal with someone felt better than eating alone. But just as he finished thinking that, he suddenly felt a tug on his noodles. Looking down, he saw the creature once again holding one of his ramen strands near its beak, trying to eat it. Han's patience broke. He shouted in frustration, asking why it was behaving like this after ruining his food once already. Just as they began another tugging struggle, the doorbell rang. Someone was at the door. Still holding the pot and yelling at the creature to let go, Han shouted that he would get it in a second. He walked to the door with the creature still clinging to his shirt, its claws hooked tightly into the fabric as if refusing to let go. When he opened the door, he saw that it was his neighbor, an older woman from the next apartment. Surprised, Han asked why she had come. The kindly woman smiled and asked if she was interrupting his meal, explaining that she had brought some side dishes to share with him and wanted to talk about something. Han's curiosity was piqued, and he wondered what she wanted to discuss. As she glanced at the fluffy creature still hanging onto his shirt, her smile widened. She said that she actually wanted to talk about the creature because there was something she needed to tell him about it. The creature looked from Han to the lady, making a curious sound as if it understood that they were talking about him and wanted to know what was going on. Outside the apartment, several fantasy creatures similar to Haeyang and Fluffy were walking around. Each had different colors and features. Some looked more like owls, while others resembled rabbits. The neighbor lady came carrying a large hot pot filled with stew and some meat, along with a big packet that also had toilet paper in it. She placed everything down and began by apologizing to Han, explaining that it was all her fault that he got caught up in a misunderstanding earlier. She said she had called the previous tenant, raising her voice about Haeyang, and only later realized that she had made a mistake. She told him that she had spoken to the former owner, explained the whole situation, and wanted to apologize again for all the trouble. Han immediately forgave her, saying it was no big deal because when they had first seen Haeyang, both that creature and the one he was caring for looked exactly the same. The lady smiled, relieved, while Han sheepishly thanked her for bringing the side dishes and the toilet paper. As they talked, the little creature began chewing on the toilet paper roll with its beak, tearing the edges apart. Han quickly covered it with his hand and scolded it to stop biting the paper. The lady chuckled softly and explained that one could never visit a new neighbor's home empty-handed. The creature, still chewing the piece of paper it had bitten off, sat right in front of the lady, who reached out and gently poked its forehead, smiling as she asked where this little one had come from. She mentioned that there was only one fluffy white creature in the entire apartment complex and wondered aloud if it might have come from outside. Han asked her whether there were many fantasy creature owners living in the building. The neighbor nodded and explained that yes, this building was one of the district-approved complexes that allowed residents to keep fantasy pets. Hearing this made Han recall his conversation with the landlord a few days earlier, when he had asked if he could keep a creature like Fluffy in his unit. The landlord had agreed immediately, though Han had found it odd at the time. The lady went on to say that many residents had their own unique creatures. Some even had something called sharks. The mention of such a name made Han freeze in horror, imagining a dangerous beast living in the same building as multiple families. The neighbor laughed and reassured him that they were not dangerous at all. She showed him a picture on her phone of one of the sharks, which turned out to be a small, cat-sized animal with a cat's body, cat-like ears, and the face of a tiny shark. Han stared at it blankly and asked why its face looked like that before handing the phone back. The lady simply smiled and said it was adorable in its own way. After chatting for a while, she told Han that she would soon ask around among the other residents to see if anyone recognized the fluffy white creature. Han thanked her sincerely, saying he owed her a big favor for helping so much, but she shook her head and said she was the one indebted for all the trouble she caused earlier. Before leaving, she suggested that next time, they could take their pets on a walk together, with Hannah, Durry, Sam, and Fluffy all joining in. Han was caught off guard by that and asked why walking was necessary. The lady looked surprised to hear that he hadn't been taking the creature out for walks. Han tried to justify himself by saying that he had taken it to the vet earlier that day, but the lady looked even more concerned. She explained that such a short trip didn't count as proper exercise for a creature like this, and that these animals needed a lot of physical activity to stay healthy. She seemed genuinely worried that he might not be able to handle it alone. Before Han could reply, the lady simply smiled again and said he would find out soon enough. She added that if he ever needed any help, he should feel free to ask her any time. With that, she waved goodbye and left. Han stood there for a moment after she closed the door, still confused by what she had said. He muttered to himself, wondering if she was exaggerating because he couldn't imagine such a small creature needing so much exercise. Looking over at Fluffy, he thought that maybe the lady was just overreacting. Yawning, Han stretched his arms and began walking lazily toward his bedroom. He said to himself that he didn't even have the energy to go to the convenience store, let alone take the creature for a walk. He figured that just shaking a toy around a bit would probably count as enough exercise. With that thought, he plopped down on his bed, too tired to care about anything else. The creature jumped onto the bed beside him, curling up close. Han smiled faintly and said that the little one should be a homebody just like him, because staying home was the best thing in the world. With a long sigh, he drifted off to sleep without a care. As Han slept soundly, snoring softly, the creature stood right in front of his face, staring at him with a blank expression. Its eyes began to glow faintly, and a small, eerie smile spread across its face as if it had been planning something mischievous all along. When morning came, sunlight filled the room, but Han's phone was already overflowing with hundreds of messages and 12 missed calls from his planning team leader. He had clearly missed something important. As the phone rang for the 13th time, the loud vibration finally woke him up. Half asleep, Han groggily reached out and picked up the call. In a lazy voice, he asked who it was, only to hear a woman shouting angrily on the other end, demanding to know why he hadn't answered for so many days. Shocked awake, Han shot up from bed, his face turning pale when he realized that it was his team leader. Han shouted at his team leader with a sarcastic smile, asking what made her call him so suddenly. His voice hid a mix of surprise and irritation. The team leader replied that she had called him because of the project they had assigned to him. She reminded Han that the deadline was today, and he had promised to submit the work by morning. Now it was already 1 in the afternoon, and she was furious that he had not sent it yet. Han quickly apologized and said that he had been busy and overwhelmed during the last few days. He requested a little more time, promising that he would finish and send the project before dinner. After a long exchange of arguments and complaints, the leader finally agreed to give him extra time. Han gratefully thanked her before hanging up the call. He sat back on his bed and sighed deeply, saying to himself that he had only planned to rest for a short while, but he had completely passed out from exhaustion. As soon as he put his foot on the floor, he felt something strange. A piece of toilet paper was stuck to his foot. Confused, he looked around and was shocked to see the entire apartment in complete chaos. Torn pieces of toilet paper were everywhere on his desk, on his computer, over his clothes, even on his food. It looked as if a snowstorm had hit his home. Staring at the mess in disbelief, he shouted in frustration, wondering what on earth had happened during the night. He picked up bits of shredded toilet paper, shouting angrily that it had been a gift from the neighbor, and now it was completely ruined. He called out to the creature, demanding to know if it was the one who did this. Han then heard some soft rustling among the pile of toilet paper. When he looked closely, he found the creature peacefully sleeping inside the rolls, snuggled up as if it were the most comfortable bed in the world. Seeing this, Han's face twitched with anger, and he sarcastically remarked that the creature must have had a lot of fun last night. He picked it up with both hands and brought it close to his face. The creature blinked sleepily, confused by the noise and shouting, and made a small sound as if asking what was wrong. Han didn't change his expression and quietly placed the creature on the bed, telling it to stay still while he cleaned the room. He began collecting all the toilet paper from the floor and piled it up in the middle of the room, thinking that maybe he could still save some of it by putting it into a bag. But before he could do that, the creature suddenly jumped from the bed straight into the pile of toilet paper as if it were a playground. The heap exploded into the air, and pieces flew all over the room again. Han froze in disbelief as the whole mess returned to how it had been before. Sighing deeply, he sat at his computer, determined to find out what was wrong with this creature. He searched online and found information saying that these types of creatures had a habit of nesting in soft and fluffy materials. The post even included an advertisement for a nesting kit, saying that it was extra cozy and cost around $100. Han shook his head and decided not to buy it since he already had plenty of soft material from all the destroyed toilet paper. He gathered the pile into a box, and soon the creature climbed in and began playing happily inside, completely absorbed in its new nest. Seeing this, Han sarcastically muttered that the creature must be thrilled after using up 24 rolls of toilet paper. Then Han returned to his desk and started working on his project. He knew that if he didn't finish it before dinner, he would be fired for sure. He focused as much as he could, too busy even to eat, while the creature stayed behind him, quietly watching and moving around as if planning something again. Suddenly, Han heard a loud crash from the corner of the room, as if something had been thrown over. Alarmed, he rushed to check what had happened. To his dismay, he saw that the creature had knocked over both trash cans near the front door, scattering garbage everywhere. He immediately bent down to pick everything up, scolding the creature as he cleaned. But before he could finish, another loud thud came from the computer room. His heart sank because all of his important equipment and documents were kept there. His face turned pale, realizing this sound could only mean trouble. When he ran into the room, he saw the creature sitting right on top of his drawing tablet, tapping it curiously. The chair, keyboard, and even the screen stand were knocked over. The creature stared at the bright lights from the tablet screen, fascinated by them, while Han stood frozen in the corner, completely speechless. Then Han suddenly remembered what the neighbor lady had told him earlier, that these creatures needed a lot of exercise, and that he wouldn't be able to handle it if he didn't let them move around enough. Realizing the truth, Han admitted to himself that he had made a huge mistake by ignoring her advice and thinking she was exaggerating. Without wasting another moment, he rushed to the nearby market and bought a pet harness and leash set. When he returned home, he gently put the harness on the creature and held the leash firmly in his hand. He told the creature that they were going for a walk immediately. Han quickly changed into outdoor clothes, wore his cap and shoes, and held the leash tightly as the creature wagged its tail and made cheerful noises. Han was on a call with his lead manager, saying that instead of sending the files by dinner that day, he would send them the next morning. Hearing that she agreed, Han felt relieved and began thanking and praising her repeatedly. After ending the call, he smiled faintly, happy that the deadline had been pushed a little further. He told himself that if he went out for a short walk and cleared his mind, he could come back, work for half an hour, and finish everything with time to spare. Having planned his schedule, he looked down at the little creature beside him and said that they were ready to go out for their walk. Han stepped out of the apartment wearing his outdoor clothes, shoes, and cap, holding the leash attached to the creature's small harness. He looked forward with mild curiosity, wondering what kind of things they might encounter outside. As they reached the front gate of the apartment, two college-aged girls were passing by. Han and the creature stood still like statues, not moving an inch. When the girls noticed the little creature, they turned around in excitement, squealing that it was so cute and calling it a griffin fluffy tit while trying to grab its attention. Han remained stiff and expressionless, completely frozen like a robot, while the creature casually began to lick its own body and groom itself. Then it became clear why Han looked so frozen and lifeless. He had absolutely no idea how to walk a pet. He was too lazy to ever bother learning and had never done it before. He told himself that he had only just moved into the neighborhood and didn't know the area at all. The only walking he ever did was to the convenience store, which he now questioned if it even counted as a walk. Realizing how little he actually moved, Han understood that such short trips would never be enough for a fast and energetic creature like the one he had. Just then he felt the leash tugging sharply in his hand. When he looked down to see why, he saw the creature biting its own leash and trying to pull him forward. The creature gave him a sly, playful smile and flapped its wings, as if telling Han to follow. Han was surprised, but also relieved to realize that the creature seemed to know more about walking than he did. Laughing at his own inexperience, he decided to let the creature take the lead. Declaring that the creature would guide the way while he just followed, Han handed over all control. The small creature puffed up proudly and began walking with cheerful noises while Han followed closely behind, trusting it completely. Without thinking where they were going, Han let the creature guide him through the streets. If the creature pulled right, he turned right. If it went left, he went left, never questioning anything. He was smiling, convinced that the creature knew exactly what it was doing. However, his blind trust quickly turned into regret when the creature began leading him through extremely narrow paths and strange corners. It squeezed through tiny alleys, climbed low walls, and even tried walking along the top of fences like it was doing parkour. Han struggled to follow, tripping and scraping himself, completely out of breath. Soon, the creature pulled him into a cramped space behind a large building, where bushes and walls closed in tightly on all sides. An owl-like creature perched on a nearby wall watched them curiously, as if wondering what they were doing. Finally, Han lost his patience and shouted for the creature to stop. He pulled back on the leash, trying to drag it out of the narrow space. The creature resisted, tugging hard and attempting to crawl under a parked car, which Han absolutely refused to do. He planted his feet firmly and shouted that there was no way he was going under a car. The tug-of-war continued, with Han pulling back as the creature strained forward with all its strength. Frustrated, Han yelled that the creature never listened to him and asked if it would hurt to obey just once. While he was struggling, the neighbor lady appeared, walking nearby. Seeing him struggling with the leash, she called out his name in surprise, asking if he was taking the fluffy creature for a walk today. Han nodded quickly, admitting that he had finally decided to give it a try like she had suggested, though he looked exhausted already. He began complaining that the creature had been dragging him through all sorts of ridiculous places like alleys, back walls, and narrow corners. The lady laughed and told him that he was doing it wrong. He was supposed to lead the creature, not the other way around. She said she would have gone along with him to guide him if she didn't have to pick up her daughter from school soon. Before leaving, she offered to give him some tips on walking creatures, which Han gratefully accepted. Standing beside her was her own pet, a massive three-headed Charizard. Each head made a different noise as it looked curiously at Han's small creature. The lady explained that the area they were currently in was too crowded for proper walks and told him about a better place to go instead. She said that was where Hana, Dory, and Sam, her three-headed Charizard, usually went for their walks. The Charizard leaned down and began licking Han's creature enthusiastically, all three heads taking turns until its fur was completely messed up. Han thanked the lady for her advice and said he would try going there. She smiled and told him to enjoy his walk before heading off. Han looked down at his creature, whose fur was sticking up in every direction after being licked so much. He sighed and asked what on earth had just happened, but the creature only blinked at him innocently. Then the two of them headed toward the place the lady had mentioned, a nearby park called Mound Park. The park was beautiful, blanketed with golden autumn leaves, and had proper walking paths without any traffic. There were people strolling quietly, some alone and others with their pets. Han looked around in surprise and said that he never realized there was such a nice trail so close to home. The slope was a bit steep, but the atmosphere was peaceful and calm. On his left, he saw a woman walking a large owl griffin. It was much bigger and more majestic than Han's small, fluffy creature. He admired it, saying that he had never seen such a large one before. It looked incredible. He also remembered that big griffins like that required a special license, while smaller ones like his did not. After watching the owl griffin for a while, Han looked down at his creature and said that if other griffins came here often, this must be a really nice place to walk around. Before he could say more, the creature suddenly pulled the leash hard and began running at full speed. Han barely had time to react before he was dragged along, stumbling after it as it bolted down the path. The leash tightened, and Han shouted its name, calling for it to stop, but it didn't slow down at all. The creature ran straight through the trail, into the trees covered with fallen autumn leaves, dragging Han behind like a rag doll. Remembering the tip from the neighbor lady, Han reached into his pocket in desperation and pulled out a griffin churro snack, the creature's favorite treat. Hopping it would finally stop running, and it really happened, making Han surprised that the trick actually worked. He remembered that the neighbor auntie had given him a tip to give Fluffy a treat and match his steps while walking. It sounded simple enough, so Han decided to give it a try. To his surprise, it worked perfectly. Fluffy happily munched on the churro and seemed to enjoy the walk even more. It was easier than Han had imagined, and he realized that this was what reward training really meant. Once he started giving Fluffy treats while walking, the little creature got the hang of it right away and began walking calmly by his side. Han couldn't help but think he should have tried this from the start, but at least now he was glad that he did. Looking at the direction banner ahead, he noticed that 3 places were nearby: the walking trail, the observatory, and the park. Han asked Fluffy if he wanted to check them out, and as the creature cheerfully nodded, they started heading deeper into the forest. Han was enjoying the walk, slowly climbing the stairs and admiring the pretty flowers along the way, while Fluffy sniffed around excitedly. The creature was smelling all kinds of flowers, sometimes even sneezing when his nose got irritated, which made Han laugh a little. But as they turned around a bend, they suddenly noticed some cute little brown creatures staring at them, frozen in surprise after seeing the Griffon. Han soon realized that these small animals were scattered all over the forest, blending with the trees and bushes. After a while, though, Han started feeling tired. Even though Fluffy still had plenty of energy to keep going, Han's legs were starting to ache. After all, the most he ever walked was to the convenience store next door. Still, when he looked up and saw that only a few stairs were left, he felt a small spark of determination. The glimmer of the setting sun at the top of the path gave him just enough motivation to finish. Finally reaching the top, he was greeted with a breathtaking sight, the sun sinking behind the distant buildings, painting the sky in orange and pink. It was beautiful beyond words. Both Han and Fluffy stood there silently, soaking in the moment. Han smiled and told Fluffy that it really wasn't a bad day at all and that they should go out again sometime soon. But right then he heard a grumbling sound from Fluffy's stomach. With a helpless smile, Han decided it was time to head home. By the time they returned, Fluffy was so exhausted from the walk that he completely passed out on the bed, curling up beside Han. Even Han, with his terrible stamina, was just as wiped out. The next morning, however, his peace didn't last long. As soon as he woke up, his phone started buzzing nonstop. It was his team leader, shouting and scolding him for missing the deadline and asking for an extension again. Han sighed deeply, rubbing his eyes, already regretting not checking his work emails the night before. We come to know that the place Han lives in is called the Moon District in Jurami City, a serene area filled with spacious residential complexes. As the boy was walking around, he told Fluffy that he moved there because housing was cheaper. But now that he paid more attention, he realized there were so many people raising fantasy beasts in this area. Han had already noticed that he rarely saw such beasts where he used to live before. Speaking of which, the neighbor Auntie came by once again, asking Han about where he had moved from. She knew that the boy used to live with his family before becoming independent. Coincidentally, Han had matched his walking schedule with the Auntie's, so they often strolled together. During these walks, he learned about the area's layout and even picked up some useful tips from her. The Auntie once told Han that there was a dangerous area where critters sometimes appeared, warning him to be careful. Han wondered what kind of dangerous critters she was referring to. We come to know that Han had moved from Changmiao, a bustling metropolis. The Auntie already knew the place and remarked that Han must be feeling much more peaceful compared to living in such a busy city. She mentioned that Changmiao also had strict regulations for fantasy beasts because of the tall skyscrapers everywhere. Winged or aquatic beasts were entirely banned there. The Auntie wondered why even aquatic beasts were banned, and Han explained that once an orca beast had gotten into the sewers and grown enormous, creating massive sinkholes in every drain pipe. It was total chaos. Han then asked if it was legal to raise large griffons in Jurami, and the Auntie told him that there were a few districts nearby with private estates where many large beast owners lived. She even said she had once visited one of those estates and saw someone raising an actual dragon. Han couldn't imagine how anyone could raise a dragon, shaking his head in disbelief. The Auntie also mentioned that her daughter was at a boarding school and that there was a vet specializing in large beasts nearby. She promised to introduce Han to her daughter when she came to visit. Meanwhile, we see that both Fluffy and the Auntie's three-headed pet were happily playing together. After a while, the Auntie said that it was time for them to part ways because the kindergarten was right ahead and she had to fetch her child. Han nodded and promised to take care of her pet while she went inside. The three-headed creature, named Hana, Duri, and Sami, sat beside Han as he decided to rest for a while on a nearby bench with the pets. But suddenly, Fluffy turned his head and bolted off towards something in the distance. Han panicked, leaving the three-headed pet behind as he ran after him, grabbing Fluffy with both hands. To his surprise, he found that Fluffy wasn't in danger at all. He had simply spotted a plush toy inside a nearby claw machine game and wanted it badly. Han sighed in relief, but then noticed that Fluffy was now trying to wreck the claw machine to get the plush toy out. The three-headed pet followed close behind, grabbing their leash by themselves. Han quickly took the leash back and crouched down, telling Fluffy to stop before he broke it. But seeing how much Fluffy wanted it, Han checked his wallet, wondering how much cash he had left. He took out a note and tried his luck on the claw machine. The first try grabbed a white plushie, but it slipped and dropped back inside. The next attempt caught a really odd-looking monkey plush, which fell into the slot. Fluffy immediately grabbed it with his beak, thrilled that he finally had something to play with. Han looked at the strange plush in confusion, trying to figure out what it was supposed to be, maybe an orangutan or a caveman. Either way, as long as Fluffy liked it, that was all that mattered. But then one of the three heads tapped Han's shoulder. When he turned around, he realized that Hana, Duri, and Sami also wanted something from the machine. Han chuckled helplessly, took out more cash, and began playing again. After several tries, he finally managed to get 3 more plushies, 1 for each head. As the scene shifts, the auntie comes out of the kindergarten with her child and stops in shock. Her pets were proudly holding their own plushies, wagging their tails happily. The auntie burst out laughing and immediately handed Han some money, even though he tried to refuse. She told him that since all 3 pets loved the toys so much, he should accept the money as thanks. Later that evening, back at his house, Han received side dishes from the neighbor auntie once again. Realizing this, he smiled, thinking that at least he wouldn't have to worry about food for a while. But as he thought about food, his stomach growled. He was suddenly starving. He looked at Fluffy and asked if they should have dinner. However, Fluffy was too busy enjoying his new and weird plushie, cuddling and pecking at it before finally falling asleep on his little toilet paper bed with a happy smile. Han looked at him fondly, feeling glad he had managed to get that plushie. At least now, Fluffy had something to play with. As the scene shifts again, we see Fluffy dreaming peacefully. In his dream, his former owner had given him the same kind of plush toy, and he was hugging it happily. But suddenly, he woke up, blinking in confusion, wondering what that dream was all about. As Fluffy woke up, he saw that it was already the next day, and the boy was still sleeping on his bed, with the soft morning light coming through the window. Fluffy made some grumbling noises that slightly woke Han up for a second, but the boy soon drifted back to sleep. Fluffy began climbing onto the bed, but when he saw that his owner was still sleeping, he quietly went back to his little toilet paper bed. He picked up the plushie and kept it near the boy, wanting to show it to him proudly. Han, still half asleep, blinked in confusion, wondering why Fluffy was doing that. As Han sat up, the small creature climbed onto his chest and curled up, sleeping soundly with the plushie beside him. Han muttered that Fluffy was heavy, but the little creature didn't care at all, snuggling in even more. Both of them fell asleep again peacefully. Then we get a short flashback. Fluffy had planted something in the ground that had started to sprout. As the scene shifted, it was morning once again, and Han's friend Jin appeared at the door, calling out for Cloudy this time. Han opened the door and began closing it immediately, not wanting to deal with him, but Jin was persistent as always. He shouted for Han to let him in because he wanted to see the cute little Cloudy. Han corrected him, saying it was Fluffy *, not Cloudy, and that since he was upset, Jin should just go home instead of bothering him. But Jin, being stubborn, walked right in anyway. Han struggled but eventually gave up trying to stop him. Jin looked around, wondering where Fluffy was, and Han told him the creature was in his room, hiding in its nest. Jin blushed, wondering what kind of nest Han had made, only for Han to ruin the moment by telling him it was just a tissue box. Han decided to finish some work, telling Jin to stay quiet for a while. He ordered some pizza while waiting, since it was cheap and filling. Jin stared at the makeshift tissue box, still finding it adorable and realizing that Fluffy was hiding inside the pile of white tissues. Han shouted again that his name was Cloudy *, but Fluffy. Jin didn't care and called out to Fluffy anyway, telling him that his friend was here. Slowly, Fluffy peeked out of the tissues, but as soon as he saw Jin, he hid back inside again. Jin found that even more adorable and wondered if Fluffy just didn't want to play with him. Suddenly, Jin pulled out a pink leash that looked like a whip, asking Fluffy why he was acting shy. Han grew nervous, asking Jin to just focus on ordering the pizza. We then find out that it was actually a *mousetail fishing rod *, a toy designed to stimulate hunting instincts in small or medium griffins. Jin extended the rod and whipped it gently, teasing the griffin out of his box. Fluffy was annoyed at first, but Jin kept going, and soon the little creature began enjoying it. Han, meanwhile, continued working on his laptop. Suddenly, Fluffy jumped onto Han's head, startling him. Han groaned and asked Jin why Fluffy was acting so hyper, but Jin told him to relax, saying Fluffy was just playing around. Just then, the doorbell rang. The pizza had arrived. The two sat down to eat the delicious meal, while Fluffy was given a small plastic dish with something to nibble on. Han felt relieved that his long and stressful deadline was finally over. Jin urged him to eat more since the pizza was so good. While eating, Han noticed that Fluffy was struggling with the plastic stretchy toy, and he couldn't help but laugh. Han told Jin that he had been forced outside daily for walks lately, usually for 1 or 2 hours, and it made his whole body ache like he'd been beaten. He admitted he was too tired to work efficiently these days. Jin, however, told him it was good for his stamina. Han needed the exercise. He even suggested Han should join the neighborhood walking club, saying he was part of a few himself. Han frowned, saying he found meeting people awkward, and asked why Jin had joined such clubs when he didn't even own a fantasy beast. Jin made a strange face and confessed that he joined them just so he could photograph cute, lovable creatures freely. Han sighed and seriously told him not to make that face in public, but Jin ignored him, grinning. Jin then said he brought something fun and asked if Han wanted to see it. He took out a tiny police hat made for pets and placed it on Fluffy's head. The creature looked even more adorable, and even Han was impressed, asking where Jin had gotten it. We learned that Jin was actually quite professional. He saved cute props like that for photography projects and even had more outfits ready. Han liked the idea of a mini fashion show for Fluffy, dressing him as a cute police officer and making him pose. The griffin blinked, clearly confused, as Han chuckled that no criminal could resist such cuteness. The next outfit was a tuxedo, making Fluffy look like a fine gentleman, a classy, high-status griffin. Then came a punk-style outfit, which annoyed Fluffy as he threw down the glasses because he couldn't see through them. Jin realized the background at home was too plain for good photos, and Han remembered that it was time for their daily walk anyway. Both agreed and headed outside. Jin kept calling him Cloudy, while Han kept correcting him, but now even Fluffy seemed annoyed. They still hadn't started walking properly, as Jin kept stopping to take more pictures. Realizing that Fluffy was getting bored of the endless camera flashes, Han suggested that they go back home. Just then, a voice called out from behind. A young woman recognized Jin and smiled, saying it was nice to see him again. She had a pink-colored griffin of her own, dressed adorably, instantly catching Fluffy's attention. The female called out to Jin once again, telling him that it was fancy meeting him here and it was lovely to see him. Jin called out to the lady as Min, asking her how she had been and if she liked the edited photos that Jin had sent her last time. Min told the man that he did a really great job and her Stargram account was flooded with hearts, and her phone notifications wouldn't stop. Han wondered about who the lady was, and Jin informed the boy that she was a regular photo client. But Min noticed something and dropped down immediately, screaming after noticing Fluffy and telling him that he was such a cute white griffon. She asked if this was the fluffy tit species, even complimenting the creature's outfit and saying it suited him. Min turned towards Han, asking if he was Fluffy's owner and if she could pet him. Han calmly informed the girl that Fluffy was in a bad mood and might bite her if she touched him. But before that, the lady started doing so, and Fluffy instantly looked really happy while purring. Han realized that the creature was just a brat who acted differently according to genders, and even Min realized that the creature was such a flirt. Han wondered why Fluffy only bit him whenever he tried to do the same. But then Han suddenly looked down and saw that the lady had her own griffon. He complimented her and told her that her griffon was so well-behaved, wondering if it was trained properly. The lady got down, picked up the griffon, and told Han that her name was Peach. The lady was actually shocked that Han did not know the griffon. Even the griffon was smiling while Min told him that it was weird that someone still didn't know who Peach was. She wondered if they should show Han what the pet had got. The griffon agreed, and Min told Peach to make a cute pose. The pet smiled adorably, putting both paws on her cheeks. For Jin, this much was enough to have a nosebleed, and it was working even on Fluffy, who was blushing intensely while taking deep breaths. Seeing that, Min asked Han if this rang any bells now, but Han clearly had no idea, as simple as he was. Both Min and Peach were actually shocked by this reaction of Han, and Jin immediately came to the rescue, apologizing to Min and telling her that Han was a guy completely clueless about trends and a bit detached from the world. Both Min and Peach were crying on the side, while Jin told Han that this was disappointing, even for him, because no matter what, he should have known about the Griffon Peach and how famous she actually was. Jin explained that Min was a magical beast influencer with 500,000 followers on Stargram, and her videos were actually blowing up on YouTube. That one post that the Griffon just did got 1 million views. We see on the side that even Fluffy was attracted to Peach, and every Griffon owner's algorithm recommends her. But we also see that Fluffy was immediately rejected by Peach, who showed her attitude. Han informed Jin that he was forgetting one crucial thing, while Min was recording both of them, realizing it looked cute. Han told Jin that he only had Fluffy for a week, and his YouTube algorithm was still filled with game streams and infinite challenge reruns. It was a typical teenage man's algorithm, far from anything cute. There was no way something that tiny and adorable would pop up without him searching about Griffons at all. Jin realized that it was his mistake, and Han dismissed it. But as Han knew that Jin was actually famous, he wondered if he could ask the man for a small favor. Jin wondered what it was, and Han couldn't believe that the man forgot that Fluffy still needed to find his owner. As the scene shifted, we saw that Min was actually moved after listening to the whole story. She told Han that he was really kind and promised to help him within all her limits. The boy nervously thanked the lady, while Jin picked up Fluffy once again, calling him Cloudy once again, not wanting to part with him. But Han screamed that his name was Fluffy and not Cloudy. Min suggested that they should try something simple and film both Han and Fluffy together to see the Stargram reaction, because finding the owner would be a lot easier after the video went viral. Both Han and Fluffy sat down near the bench with strange looks on their faces, wondering about what was going on. Jin called both of them out, telling them that if they stayed too still, then it wasn't going to work because this was supposed to be a really good video. Han wondered what he was supposed to do because he was completely clueless, and the man suggested that as both of them were too stiff, they couldn't use any footage. He further explained that since they were a perfect match, they should just live together. But Han was not ready to take Fluffy in. Meanwhile, we saw that Peach was actually looking at a beautiful butterfly and started going toward it while Min was still busy with the photo shoot. We saw that Peach was going farther and farther following the butterfly. She tried to catch it, but as the butterfly went into the forest, Peach started clapping her hands. Fluffy noticed it and wondered what the female Griffon was doing. She tried catching the butterfly and finally jumped, grabbing it and becoming really happy. But as she was still in the air, she encountered a two-headed pet once again and slammed herself into one of its heads. Both the pets started crying, and one of the two heads was angry about being hit by her. Peach didn't know what to do, but our boy's pet, Fluffy, came to the rescue, standing between the female and the three-headed creature. This impressed Peach so much because Fluffy had come to save her immediately. The two-headed creature started getting angry and was making cries, as if it was talking to Fluffy, telling him that one of its heads was hurting too badly. But Fluffy didn't listen and started crying out loud, so loudly that both heads immediately backed down from harming Peach. The boy was not ready to back down either, and suddenly the owner of the two-headed creature came from behind, calling them out and telling them to go home. Both of them knew that in front of their own owner they couldn't do anything bad, so they turned around and went back, making weird noises. Fluffy was actually proud that he had protected the female and turned towards Peach, but now the female Griffon had a totally different reaction. It was as if she had fallen for Fluffy. She immediately came closer to the white Griffon and rubbed her fur against him. This much attention made Fluffy blush while the creature wondered why the female had such a sudden change of heart. But everything was going along pretty well, so Fluffy didn't mind it and made some lovely noises. The scene shifted back to the park, where we saw that Han was actually tired of all this filming stuff while both Min and Jin were talking to each other. The lady complained that both their reactions weren't standing out much, and Jin suggested that they should just film the creatures instead of Han together. But the boy told them that he was tired and wanted to go home now. Suddenly, he noticed something that both the adults couldn't. He wondered where Fluffy and Peach actually were. Just then, they came running out of the forest area, both of them playing and enjoying themselves. Jin immediately noticed that the two Griffons had gotten really close. As Han asked Fluffy where he had been, the creature proudly purred while Peach continuously looked at him and rubbed herself against Fluffy. Han immediately realized that something was going on, while Jin was busy clicking pictures and Min was surprised. Suddenly, something clicked in Han's mind as he imagined that maybe the futures of both Griffons were going to be wild. He was shocked as he turned around, hearing Min, who also realized that Peach really liked Fluffy. Han was witnessing the very thing he had imagined, and even when Fluffy tried to have some personal space, Peach wouldn't leave him and kept rubbing herself against him. As the scene shifted, time passed to a few days later. We saw that Han was scrolling through reels in his typical algorithm, wondering what would happen if a mouse got hit by a taser. The video explained that when the electrodes pierce the skin, it causes extreme pain. Meanwhile, Fluffy was playing with his weird plushie, but then left it and started sleeping on the bed. Suddenly, a notification popped up on Han's phone. It was none other than Jin, who had shared a video. It was the same video they had taken in the park along with Peach, and it had just been uploaded to Min's Stargram account. The boy realized that it had already gotten tons of views in such a short time. Even Fluffy noticed the video, and Jin told him that it turned out pretty well. Jin said that Cloudy's popularity was no joke, and Han corrected him once again, saying that it was Fluffy. Even Min was ready to film again with Han soon, and Jin wondered if they should also become Beautyverse influencers since it had crazy amounts of money. But Han was too lazy for that stuff, knowing that once was enough for this kind of thing. As their stomachs started grumbling, Han wondered if they were forgetting something but decided to ignore it and told Fluffy they should just eat. The scene shifted again. We saw that Fluffy and Han were outside at the convenience store, but it started raining heavily. When they got back home, both Han and Fluffy were soaking wet. The boy couldn't believe it. Even though he had just gone to the convenience store, it suddenly started raining, and the whole scene was a mess. Then he noticed Fluffy, who was completely drenched and covered in mud. Even when Han tried to catch him, the creature escaped swiftly and ran toward the bed. Han shouted, telling the creature not to climb up, but it was too late. The whole bed was already dirty from it. Han was agonizing over the scene, telling Fluffy that he had just replaced the sheets today, and now they were ruined. Han cried a little and told Fluffy that he wouldn't let him get away with this, immediately picking him up and declaring that it was bath time. Every corner of Fluffy was going to get cleaned, even if he hated water. As the scene shifts inside the bathroom, we see some special cosmetic items along with a cooling shampoo and body wash. Han was filling a tub with water from the shower while wondering if Kang would go wild inside the water because Griffins really liked it. Even the small creature was looking at the water constantly without fail, slowly but surely digging his paws into the water and splashing it around. Kang was enjoying it, doing it multiple times, while Han wondered what the creature was doing. Just by the thought of having fun, he turned the shower towards Kang, who leapt out of the water in shock, and Han proudly laughed while making fun of him. But now Kang was angry, and he jumped straight into the water tub, splashing all the water along with the shower, which made Han completely drenched. After a while of playing around, Kang was enjoying the soothing and cold water, while Han, completely wet, wondered if the Griffin really liked it. Realizing he should probably wash up too, Han took off his shirt and started cleaning the little creature so that there was no dirt left anywhere. After that, Kang rinsed himself and shook his body wildly, which made Han wet once again. After Han dried himself off, we see that while he was applying some cooling shampoo in his hair, Kang was trying to open the washroom door, but it wasn't opening at all. After a while, both the creature and Han were completely fresh and were enjoying the evening. Han asked Kang if he was also feeling refreshed after the soothing bath, but he soon realized that Kang might catch a cold if he stayed wet. He immediately took out a hair dryer and pointed it towards Kang, deciding to dry his fur. But the creature was completely shocked after looking at the hair dryer nozzle. he jumped out of the way and started running. Han wondered what had happened as Kang started darting around in all directions, frantically shooting himself like a slingshot and going straight under the blankets to hide. Han couldn't understand what was wrong. Kang was scared and making weird noises while looking at the hairdryer nozzle. Han, still not realizing the issue, told Kang to come out because those were new sheets and they were going to get wet and damp, and Kang would catch a cold. But the creature was not ready to come out. When he saw the hairdryer placed in front of him, he started jumping frantically even inside the sheets. Seeing that, Han finally realized that Kang was scared of the hairdryer. Calling him out, Han told the creature that it was nothing and not scary at all. Han immediately put the hairdryer away as Kang slowly got out of the sheets and came down. Han explained that it was just a piece of plastic and everything was okay, but hearing that, Kang started hitting the hairdryer with his paws. After nothing happened, he went back to the sheets, still not fully convinced. Slowly, as the creature hid again, Han picked him up along with the sheets that covered him completely. Kang was getting annoyed, and Han told him that he wasn't going to use the hairdryer at all. But since it was raining outside, Han knew that if Kang didn't dry his fur, he might really catch a cold. He told Kang to come down to the floor because he had turned the floor heating on full blast, and even the creature realized that the floor was nice and warm. Kang surrendered and flopped down on the floor. Han noticed that the creature looked like a little sticky rice cake and wondered if he should lie down too, since the warmth felt like a sauna and wasn't bad at all. He told Kang to make sure to dry his fur evenly until it was completely dry, saying they could always wash the sheets if they got dirty, but getting sick was not allowed. He also explained to the creature that they couldn't turn on the boiler every time, so Kang would have to overcome scary things eventually. Suddenly, Han noticed that it was raining really hard, all of a sudden, and just then the doorbell rang. Han opened the door to see Jin standing there, completely soaked, holding a bag of convenience store food. Jin wondered why the floor was so warm, but Han ignored everything and told him that there was a towel inside to dry his hair. As Jin looked around, he spotted the hair dryer, immediately picking it up to dry his hair, and that was enough to freak Kang out again. The griffin started flailing around wildly like a slingshot, while Jin looked confused and asked what was wrong with Cloudy. Han quickly corrected him, saying the griffin's name was Kang, while the creature continued running and rummaging around in panic. Outside the house, someone carrying a large bag entered the building. A lady who thought that it must be a noisy neighbor who had just moved in nearby. As the scene shifts to the morning, we see that both Kang and Han were waking up. Looking outside the window, they noticed that after raining for a few days, the weather was finally great. Seeing such pleasant weather, Han told Kang that they should go for a walk since they needed some photosynthesis after so long. Kang agreed, wagging his tail and letting Han put on his leash as they headed out of the building. However, the moment they stepped outside the main door, both of them started sweating immediately. Han wondered what was going on because the sun was scorching hot. They quickly ran back into the building, and Han opened the news report, which said that after the rain, temperatures were expected to stay above 35 degrees Celsius for the time being. Due to the sudden downpour, summer had arrived earlier than usual this year. It was so hot that even the floor was lukewarm, and both Han and Kang were sweating like crazy, wondering what they could do. Han realized that it must be even tougher for Kang with all his thick fur, and the creature was making some weird noises that sounded like complaints. Han thought maybe Kang was telling him not to talk because it was too hot. He decided to turn on the air conditioner and got up, trying to remember where he had placed the remote after moving in. Once he found it, he turned on the AC. But as the flaps opened, his happy face immediately turned to shock. Instead of cool air, the air conditioner started spitting out flames, and Han realized it was blowing hot air. The room became even hotter, and it was unbearable for Kang. As the scene shifts, we see Han frantically calling the service center. But the staff told him that since they had too many appointments, the earliest a technician could visit would be in a week. Han asked if someone could come sooner because the temperature was rising non-stop, but the receptionist apologized, saying that even though their workforce was at full capacity, it still wasn't enough. They promised Han would receive service as quickly as possible. Hearing that, Kang got annoyed and slammed his paw onto the phone, cutting the call off. Han sighed, realizing they would have to make do with the fan for a week until the air conditioner was fixed. But Kang kept hitting the phone dangerously, so Han told him to stop. Deciding to cool down a bit, Han opened the freezer to grab a cold drink, and a wave of cool air rushed out. It felt heavenly. Kang stood there, feeling like he was in the Arctic, enjoying the refreshing breeze. But as soon as Han closed the fridge after taking out his drink, the heat returned instantly. Kang turned around and saw Han drinking the cold beverage again and again, completely refreshed and not even thinking about him. As Han sat down in his gaming chair, Kang slowly began opening the fridge door with all his might. Even though his face was strained, he didn't stop until he managed to open it just enough to feel the cool air again, even when Han told him not to. The scene shifts to the night. Both Han and Kang were now inside a convenience store. Han was eating some ice cream, feeling alive again after suffering in the heat all day. He told Kang that he also bought some Griffin wet food for him, so they should head home to eat. Kang looked happy, but then Han noticed something. One of Kang's feathers on his right wing was broken and sticking out. When Han crouched down and tried to remove it, Kang suddenly bit him, making Han cry out in pain. Even when Han tried to hold him still to check if he was hurt, Kang refused to let him touch his fur. Breaking free from his leash, Kang dashed off toward the building while Han slowly stood up and ran after him, calling out his name. Fortunately, they were already near the house, and Han realized Kang was just running toward the gate because he was hungry. But then, both Han and Kang noticed a woman sleeping right in front of the gate, blocking the entrance. Seeing that, Han stopped and wondered what a drunk woman was doing in front of his house. We see that the lady was completely blocking the villa's entrance, and Han wondered what he should do. But Fluffy was more direct. He charged straight into the woman's knees, making her slowly wake up as she mumbled that her stomach hurt. Han thought for a moment, then offered her some orange-flavored ice cream, saying it might help her since she didn't seem well. Surprised but grateful, the woman opened the ice cream and began eating it happily, clearly relieved as the cold sweetness eased her hangover. Before Han could say anything else, the lady herself asked if he was from Unit 301. Looking down at the Griffin, she also seemed to know that his name was Fluffy. But something strange happened this time. Fluffy didn't make any fuss when the beautiful lady picked him up. The woman noticed the broken feather and carefully plucked it out, even though Fluffy struggled a bit. She easily removed it and set him down again, still holding her ice cream as she told Han that the procedure was done and the Griffin wouldn't feel uncomfortable anymore. As Fluffy ran back to Han, the boy checked him over. Fluffy was annoyed but fine, and Han saw that the feather had come out cleanly. Then the lady told Han that he shouldn't leave the Griffin alone just because he was avoiding him. She explained that a broken feather needed to be removed properly for a new one to grow nicely, and said that as the Griffin's owner, Han should have known that. Realizing her misunderstanding, Han quickly explained that he was Fluffy's owner. The woman looked shocked and confused, wondering what was going on. Just then the neighbor auntie came out of the building, calling out to the lady, addressing her as Kang, and asking what she was doing outside instead of coming home. But as soon as the neighbor auntie noticed Han standing there, she also recognized him as the boy from Unit 301. Then, to Han's surprise, the lady, Kang, suddenly called the neighbor auntie her mom, which shocked both Han and Fluffy at once. Still clearly tipsy, Kang leapt toward her mother, who immediately started scolding her for smelling like alcohol. Kang, on the other hand, kept telling her mother how beautiful she was, making the scene even more awkward. Han looked at Fluffy and whispered, wondering if this was the same daughter their neighbor had mentioned before, the so-called mythical beast doctor. Hearing that, Fluffy nodded and flashed a peace sign, confirming that it was indeed her. As the scene shifted, we saw Fluffy eating his food while rubbing his stomach as if something felt off. Meanwhile, Han was deep in thought, still thinking about Kang's earlier question, if he was really Fluffy's owner. He told himself that he was just a temporary guardian, then asked Fluffy whether they would be able to find his real owner someday. Fluffy didn't seem to care and simply rolled around on the floor, acting cute. Han refused to fall for it this time, knowing he'd probably get bitten again if he touched him. So with an idea, Han decided to rub Fluffy's belly with his foot instead. To his surprise, the Griffin actually liked it, turning shy while Han looked shocked, wondering why the creature enjoyed it so much. The next day, the scene shifted again to the refrigerator. Han opened it and realized they were out of cold water. He decided to step out for a bit to buy some. Before leaving, he asked Fluffy if he wanted to go for a walk, but noticed that the creature wasn't as lively as before. Fluffy looked tired and had even left some of his food uneaten. Han wondered if it was the heat and decided they'd go for a walk later when the sun went down. As he stepped outside, Han suddenly saw someone stumble and drop their things. When he rushed to open his door, he realized it was none other than his next-door neighbor, Dr. Kang. She looked nervous, and after an awkward pause, simply said hello, feeling uneasy about their second meeting. But unlike others, Han knew how to start a conversation, and he saw the drumsticks that the lady had dropped, wondering what they were doing inside the bag of a beast doctor. Kang nervously told the boy that she was in a band as a hobby and immediately started apologizing, thinking that she had been really rude yesterday because they had a band dinner for the first time in a while, and her mom had scolded her a lot. Meanwhile, we see that her three-headed pet was actually happy working with the lady, and even Han told her not to apologize because, thanks to her, Fluffy was all right, and she even pulled out the broken feather. Kang explained that now she knew everything about how Han was temporarily fostering Fluffy, which was not an easy decision at all, complimenting him for being amazing. But to Han, it wasn't that amazing because when he moved in, Fluffy was already there and he had no choice. Kang decided to say a quick hello to the cute creature, wondering if she could see him. But as Han called out, he suddenly noticed the strange silence. He knew that Fluffy was curious, so he should have been peeking out and causing a ruckus by now, but nothing was happening. Realizing that something might be wrong, Kang immediately entered the building, and both of them went into the room where Fluffy was. They saw the cute creature with a pale face, throwing up all the food he had eaten. Han panicked, wondering what was wrong as he saw Fluffy trembling. Kang immediately examined the food and smelled it. Han's face turned pale as he called out to Fluffy, wondering what to do. Kang told him that there was nothing wrong with the food and asked if there were any warning signs that morning. Nervously, Han said there was nothing out of the ordinary, but then he remembered that, on his way to the convenience store, he had noticed Fluffy sleeping and not eating much. Realizing those were signs, he told Kang, who said it was likely a case of acute indigestion, and that, since Fluffy could get dehydrated, they needed to take him to the hospital she knew. Han immediately picked up the trembling creature, thinking that if only he had taken better care of him, things would have been fine. The scene shifted to the hospital, where Han was lost in thought until Kang asked him what he was thinking. For a moment, Han was blank, not realizing what she meant. Kang explained that he had been silent for a while, so she guessed he was blaming himself for what had happened to Fluffy. Han didn't deny it and admitted that this was all new to him. He had panicked and didn't know what to do. Even though they had only been together for a few weeks, Fluffy was opening up, and Han was getting to know him, but this kind of situation was still difficult. Kang smiled and told Han that he was growing splendidly as a beginner guardian. When Han started to ramble again, saying he was Fluffy's owner, Kang interrupted him, saying that even as a temporary guardian, he was still a guardian. Just as Han's thoughts were filled with Fluffy, maybe Fluffy's thoughts were filled with him too. Thinking about each other made for a wonderful relationship between guardian and companion beast. Kang advised him not to draw a line, even if a farewell might come one day, because the time they were spending together was genuine. Han was shocked by her words and told her that he thought she was someone who only used harsh words because of her intimidating appearance, but she had helped him in many ways and even said such kind things. Kang, furious, stood up and yelled that he really didn't understand fashion and had judged a lady by her looks. As Han apologized, the doctor came out of the operation room and called for Fluffy's guardian, telling Han that Fluffy's digestion had settled and he would be fine now. Han thanked the doctor and saw Fluffy burping while only looking at the beautiful lady and not at him. But this behavior didn't surprise Han. He already knew how big of a flirt Fluffy was. Still, as long as the creature was healthy, that was all that mattered. They went home afterward. Later, Han's air conditioner was finally working, and he enjoyed the cool air. Since an earlier appointment had been canceled, the technician had come quickly to fix it, making Han finally feel alive. Just then, Fluffy started banging his plate for food. Han told the creature to be quiet because the doctor had said Fluffy needed to be on a controlled diet, and collapsing again after just a few days would be bad. When Han opened the fridge, he saw the food Kang had left behind with a note telling him to eat up. Suddenly, he remembered the lady and wondered if he should ask Kang to eat with him. The scene shifted to the neighbor's door where someone was coming out. Han thought it was the neighbor auntie and asked if they could eat some rice cakes together, but as he looked closer, he saw a girl opening the door with a pet following her outside. That much was enough to shock Han as the lady asked him what was wrong, while Han, in disbelief, asked Kang who she was, unable to recognize her. After this question, Kang was stunned for a few moments and then realized that she was out without makeup, her face pale. She immediately knocked Han on the head with her elbow and told him that he was being really mean. Meanwhile, both their pets were meeting each other and shaking hands. As the scene shifted, we saw everyone sitting together, having some cold drinks along with rice cakes and fried chicken while the pets played around. The neighbor auntie told Han that she was glad Fluffy was okay, since she had been really surprised when she first heard the story. Han told her that it was all thanks to Kang that everything turned out fine. The aunt immediately said that it was nice to have such a good daughter who brought them delicious and plentiful food. But when she looked at her, she saw that Kang was still pouting, while Han's little sister was laughing and told her mom that Han didn't recognize Kang because she wasn't wearing any makeup. Kang immediately asked the little girl if she was still pretty without makeup, and the girl replied that she was like Cinderella. Han quickly interjected, saying it wasn't that she wasn't pretty, but that she looked so different without makeup. Kang gave the girl a few bills as a reward for speaking up for her, then turned to Han and asked how much and in what way she was pretty. Hearing all this, the girl's mother warned Kang that if she didn't tone it down, she was going to get a smack straight on the face. Everyone started eating the delicious fried chicken while Kang enjoyed some beer and the little girl played with Fluffy as he rolled on the floor. Han was shocked to see how much Kang enjoyed drinking, but the lady was even more shocked that he didn't know. After all, beer and chicken were the perfect combination. She asked if Han wanted a glass, but he said he wasn't a good drinker. Kang didn't listen and told him that if he wanted to thank her properly, he should have at least one drink. The neighbor auntie got nervous and told Han he didn't have to drink if he didn't want to, wondering who her daughter took after. But Han stopped her from scolding Kang, saying that it had been a while since he drank anyway, so he could handle it. As soon as he opened the bottle, all the fizz burst out, and Kang complained that it was such a waste. The neighbor auntie quickly stood up to grab some tissues, but Han didn't spill a drop and drank it all in one go, enjoying it completely. Kang complimented him for holding his liquor well, and after multiple bottles of beer, the scene shifted again. Kang was now pasting stickers all over Fluffy and her own pet, while Han and Kang talked. The lady explained that griffins were wise and spiritual creatures with strong empathic abilities, even capable of reading human emotions. On the other hand, Fluffy was getting slightly annoyed as the little girl continued to play with him. Kang continued, explaining that griffins were also clear communicators, making them fun companions. Han asked what Kang specialized in as a mythical creature doctor, and she proudly said she worked with large species, especially griffins. She took care of them at the National Park Service, which managed the mountain and hilly regions. Meanwhile, the little girl was playing doctor with Fluffy, who was acting like an unwilling patient. Kang explained that in the hilly areas, griffin riders were essential for forest fire surveillance and environmental surveys, and their strong stamina and keen senses made them perfect for rescuing hikers. The neighbor auntie came over and told the girl to stop teasing Fluffy because he was getting annoyed, saying it was time for bed even though she wanted to play more. Han was amazed by everything Kang was explaining, but Kang brushed it off, saying it wasn't that special since mythical beasts and humans had lived together for a long time. She even invited Han to come visit sometime. Then, curious, she asked what Han did for work since he never seemed to go out. Han blushed and told her he did a bit of drawing and was currently working on illustrations and inserts. Hearing that, the little girl got curious and asked if he could draw, calling him Uncle, which surprised Han because he didn't think he was that old. She asked him to draw Pinky Ping for her while Fluffy, annoyed, ripped off all the stickers and slammed them onto the sofa. Han already knew what Pinky Ping was, and Kang admitted that drawing was her hobby too, though she wasn't very good at it. She asked Han if he could critique one of her drawings, But before he could answer, the little girl declared that her sister's drawing didn't look like Pinky Ping at all. Han opened the drawing book, expecting something good, but what he saw was a horrifying nightmare instead of a cute creature. After a brief silence, he calmly flipped the page, folded the book, and asked the little girl what she wanted him to draw for her. Kang was completely ignored and didn't like that at all, standing up angrily. As the scene shifted, it was already morning. Han woke up in his bed with the drawing book beside him and Fluffy sleeping next to him. His head felt like it was going to split open, his throat was dry and his body heavy. As he stretched, he saw Fluffy still half asleep and remembered that Kang had asked him to draw Fluffy too. He realized that they had asked him to draw a bunch of things last night, so he must have brought the drawing book back home in his drunken state. Deciding that he should return it later, he opened the book, and his face turned bright red. He quickly closed it, realizing that he had drawn a lot of things last night. When Fluffy saw the closed book, he tried to open it again, and just as he did, Han called out to him, telling him it was time to eat. Fluffy ran off, and the book fell open, revealing a beautifully detailed drawing of none other than Kang, making Han blush even harder.